Hey guys, welcome to my Zahir guide for Eternal Return. My name is Madrio and I'm a Zahir one trick. So why should you play Zahir? Zahir is a character who gets progressively stronger as the game goes on. Zahir is very rewarding when played well due to his mechanical intensity. His entire kit is skill shots and he requires a lot of precision movement. He moves very fast with his passive alone, which allows him to move quickly from zone to zone for final build pieces. And he plays similarly to a predator with a very sneaky walking sound. Sounds like a very quiet droning sound. And he has an ease of tracking enemies with passive even in night. Who is Zahir? Zahir is a scaling mage. Leveling up drastically improves his damage output compared to other characters. He is a skirmish fighter who likes to weave in and out of battle and control the pace of the fight. He benefits very well from extra skill damage due to a low cooldown W and multi-hit ultimate, each proccing extra skill damage. He stays mobile even while casting Q to dodge enemy attacks and keep up pressure during fights. He has high snowball potential due to easy weapon routes, which allows him to get early kills and start gaining a lead. He can catch up late game with 0 kills due to his high armor shred on Q based on kill difference. He is an excellent night fighter due to being able to keep vision on enemies with passive. Some general itemization tips. Depending on the stage of the game, different stats may be valued higher or lower. This is a little bit of a theory that I put together on the value of a stat based on the point of the game. Early game, I think your raw stats, your health, defense, attack power, and stamina, which are the stats that you gain while you level up, I think those are the most valuable. Attack power is very useful when enemy's defense is low, and health is the opposite. It's very good at keeping you alive when enemy attacks are low. In your mid game, extra spell damage, extra normal attack, mobility, critical chance and damage, and attack speed are all very useful items. These work better the more points you put into it. So for example, extra spell damage is going to work better the higher extra spell damage you have altogether. And finally, I have late game scaling. These are stats that benefit you more as your base stats increase with levels. So defense gains more value the more health you have, which is gained from levels and mastery. Spell amplification is percentage based, which does more damage as your abilities gain levels. Lifesteal, again, as your attack increases, lifesteal is going to get you more health back. Regeneration in general is very good. Percentage, especially if you have a high base regen, such as Heart or Magnus, percentage regeneration benefits you a lot. And then CDR. So again, as your abilities get more powerful, being able to cast them more and having the stats to back up the mana cost behind that is very good. For Zahir specifically, he's got 2 different weapon types. He's got Shuriken and Throw. Shuriken, the weapon ability, is Caltrops, which focuses on zone control and punishing enemies for moving through an area. It's actually a really good burst tool. If you can knock someone up with a tornado and then immediately cast your Caltrops, they'll be either taking damage from moving through the Caltrops, or they'll have to stand still where you can cast your other abilities with ease. Some suggestions I suggest for Zahir is the Wind and Fire Wheels, the Azure Dagger, and the Mystic Jade Charm. I personally find the most success with Mystic Jade Charm, but it only has 10 attack charges, so you will not be able to attack with your auto attacks very often. On the throw side, the weapon ability is Smoke Screen, which blinds and slows an enemy in an area for an easy escape or limit their ability to counter your aggression. You can also use this on Shuichi. When he ults you, if you smoke screen him, he will not be able to see his daggers, and thus he will not be able to teleport across the map. These 2 options I've suggested. I think Ruthenium Marble right now is Zahir's best option. It gives you really good stats for Zahir's kit, which is high attack power, high spell amplification, and healing reduction. David's Sling is just an overtuned item right now. It gives you health regen, auto attack damage, and extra auto attack damage. For general itemization, this is armor, helms, etc. I put up the top here that he benefits from 4 key stats: health, defense, spell amp, and CDR. Health compensates for Zahir's major weakness, which is getting one shot. He's got a high potential for just being bursted out immediately, especially by some melee champs that build that way. So some options to counter that I put here are Moto Helm, Crown. Crown is an amazing item. I will always suggest you run Crown, and I'll get to a little bit more information on why later. Sunset Armor, also an amazing item that can be upgraded later, and you can even hold on to it for the remainder of the game if you want. EOD suit gives a little bit of CDR. I think it's a little on the weaker side, doesn't give as much defense, but some people might see success with it. Sword of Shah Jahan, also a really good item, really high health, gives you attack power. Definitely look to upgrade this as you get on in the game. Schrodinger's box, I'm going to skip ahead one. Schrodinger's box is an amazing amount of health. I would suggest maybe holding off onto it because you can get other items that give you more useful attributes down the road, but it's a very good early game item. And lastly, Scotty, Bracelet of Scotty, is a very powerful item for Zahir. It gives you everything you want: health, spell amp, and mana and regeneration. The next stat down, defense. This goes hand in hand with health, and as I mentioned earlier, having defense will lend you well towards the later stages of the game. Some general items here: Tac Ops Helm gives you CDR and defense. Bannernet gives you magic defense, specifically against spells. Same with Amazoness Armor. Battlesuit's a more general defense item. Again, I don't really like this one. I think I would much rather run Sunset Armor, but Battlesuit is a good option if you come across it. Covert Ops is a high CDR, okay defense item. Doesn't give you any health, and I think there are better options. And then EOD boots, probably the second best boots out there, right behind your Hermes boots, which is a RNG item. Spell Amp, for obvious reasons, Zahir has excellent damage and low cooldowns to take advantage of Spell Amp. I put Crown here again. Crown has spell amplification, but it's so low that if you're trying to bolster your kit with more Spell Amp, Crown is probably not the best option for that. The best option would be the next one here, which is Burgeonet. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Gives you a lot of Spell Amp, gives you CDR, and gives you some mana, which is pretty good stats overall for Zahir. You will want to pair this with something like Sunset Armor because you will be lacking some level of defense that you would get from other headpieces, especially Crown. Dropnir gives you percentage spell amp. It's a decent item. I think Scotty is still better for that same arm slot just because it gives you that flat penetration. Another similarity to the Crown here is the Straight Jacket sneakers. They give a slight amount of flat spell amp. I think it's around 10 around the time of recording this video. It's not a whole lot. It does give you SP regen, and it's probably one of the better starter items for Zahir in general. Next one over is Uchiwa. Uchiwa is really weird for Zahir. It gives you really good lifesteal, which is super useful for auto attack based champions. And unfortunately, Zahir spends so much time kiting, and his auto attack animation is so slow that he doesn't get to get a whole lot of use out of lifesteal. However, it does give a large amount of SP regen and spell amplification, flat spell amplification, which is very good for Zahir's kit. So, if you don't mind kind of wasting the lifesteal portion of the item, it's very strong. The last one here, White Crane Fan. It's got decent spell amplification. Again, it's flat. It gives you movement speed, and it gives you very powerful tool in the form of healing reduction, which is super useful against anyone with lifesteal, and it even works against people using food. It reduces the effects of their food so they're not healing as much. Continuing on here. And the last stat, CDR, I think it goes without saying. If you've got a lot of spell amp, flat spell amp, and you've got a lot of CDR, you're going to be able to output so much DPS. A lot of people aren't going to be able to put up with it. Maybe someone with a Bannernet and an Amazoness armor will be able to block a lot of that damage, but it's going to allow you to have your tornado up for when you need to peel someone off and just barrage enemies over and over again. Put an important note here. This goes along with the comment I made on White Crane Van. It is important to have some form of healing reduction in your build. This lowers the effects of both lifesteal and food regeneration, so it fits Zahir's skirmish in and out playstyle since he can't burst past healing. He has a lot of damage, but it comes in the form of overall DPS more so than raw upfront damage. It does not stack, so if you have one healing reduction item, I would limit to that in your build. For example, if you're building Marble, which has 40% healing reduction on spells, it does not make sense to also build White Crane Fan. The last comment here, be careful of being too reliant on 3+ of the same item. So lighters, gems, it's very easy to start stacking too many of those. I know on some of my earlier iterations of the Marble build, I would have 5 gems, and it would be a struggle to get all of them. I think 3 is an okay choice if you really have to. I would just try to hit those items earlier, or if they're not as valuable in your build, it's okay to have that extra item as well. Last comment here, it's just a little extra portion. These are not all end-all item choices. You can be flexible in anything. Even Enaz Zahir works. I personally have been trying out hybrid crit with Zahir to help me against ranged enemies, which give him a little bit more trouble. Lastly, I put here adaptive build, and I put quotes RNG. So going towards the end of the late game, you will come across various item components that cannot be found in normal looting. These items are Mithril, Tree of Life, VF Blood Sample, and Meteorite. These are used to build stronger weapons and armor that you wouldn't normally be able to include in your default build. It is always a good idea to try to build equipment out of these items, since it only makes you stronger and provides you with valuable experience. When theory crafting your build, I suggest keeping these upgrades in mind so that if you do come across rare materials, you have a piece of equipment you're willing to part with. As an example, and I don't have a slide with this, so I apologize, but if I had a build with Marble, Crown, any armor, any arm, straight jacket sneakers as an example, and Uchiwa, I'd be looking to upgrade my chest piece to Queen of Hearts, which requires the VF sample. I'd be looking to upgrade my arm piece into either auto arms or the Scotty, and I would be looking to replace my boots with Hermes boots. These are all excellent upgrades, and I get to hold on to my Marble, I get to hold on to my Crown, and I get to hold on to my Uchiwa while making use of it, those with the rest of my kit. A little bit about Zahir's playstyle going past the items. Zahir has 2 main ways of engaging in combat. He has all-in, using a combination of auto attacks, ultimate, and all-out combos in a short amount of time to out DPS and kill the opponent. This works very well against people that you can out DPS or people that are very squishy. If you have a weapon advantage against someone who has low defenses and armor, this is a really good option. Works early game due to quick power spikes. If you complete your weapon very early, you get your full ability combo. Your Q is around level 3, and you can lock people down in corridors or corners, which forces the enemies to stay in damage range for an extended period of time. Makes it very easy to lock someone down in ultimate and just toss out a bunch of autos and spells without having to move. The other fighting style that Zahir has is kiting, which is spacing out abilities to reliably hit while minimizing retaliation through proper movement. You're not going to be doing as much damage right away as the all-in combo. What you're trying to do here is mitigate damage. This is very useful against melees. Good example here is Jackie. Jackie's actually a very easy fight for Zahir. You don't want to stand toe-to-toe with Jackie. Jackie's gonna life steal all the damage that you're doing. So in order to combat that, you're going to want to space out your damage and move backwards while Jackie's chasing you down. Late game, if you want, you can stockpile traps to effectively give you more kiting potential. Using traps that slow a route minimizes the movement required for you. So late game, when you're in that final square, you're playing Zahir, you can't just continuously kite backwards. So you need to be able to create space in other ways. Having those traps in between you and the enemy prevents them from being able to reach you directly. And if they do try, they'll land on the trap. You'll have an easy ability landing chance because they're slowed or they're rooted. Some general tips for Zahir. Try to avoid early skirmishes. Using key resources such as health and energy too early will hurt you more as you transition through the game. There's so many times where I thought I could take an early fight, or I just wanted to poke someone and it ended up into a poking battle. I leave the area with half health early on in the game and I run into someone else. Full health, full resources. They're going to take advantage of that and they're going to take you down. It's not worth it. Use abilities to proc passive on animals while chasing or running. If you can't reliably hit players, the next best thing is actually using your abilities on animals. It's going to keep up your movement speed and your W ammo. If you're using Qs, I would not use E's because you need that to peel while you're running, while you're chasing. If you can reliably hit the player, I would do it. But if you don't think you can hit them, if they're weaving back and forth, trying to avoid all your abilities, just hit an animal. Just get out of there, or hit an animal to chase them. If they're out of your range, it's not worth trying to reach them and wasting an ability. Proccing passive on players or enemies while going between zones will help you gain combat XP and get to target zones more quickly. Kind of goes hand in hand with this other point. If you've got the resources to spare, there's nothing wrong with just throwing out a Q on someone that's near you and just moving on along your way. Don't try to engage in a fight if you don't think you can win. I would definitely not try to fight anyone if you don't think that you can kill them. Okay, because if you just do damage and then try to start a fight and they get away, you wasted a lot of resources trying to start that fight. You won't be ready for an actual fight coming up. The next thing is slow down on your abilities. You will become less predictable and aim more accurately. There's no reason to just throw every ability right away unless you're going to reliably hit them. If you're in the squads and you're with the team that has a lot of CC and that can lock down your enemies, then that makes a lot of sense. But in something like solos where you are reliant on your own abilities, it doesn't make sense to just use everything off cooldown. Another thing is your abilities combo with each other. If you've got an Eye of Azrael proc, your passive, on an enemy, it doesn't make sense to throw another W if your Q is off cooldown in 1 second. Hold that W for the next time you need to put an eye on him, because your Q is going to do more damage, way more damage. Next point here, stay close enough to winning fights to keep them interested, but far enough to keep them from turning on you and bursting you down. So here's really swishy. He could be super ahead and you could go toe-to-toe with a crit person, but as soon as they get within reach, you're going to die super quickly. Fiora is a powerful opponent to go against, because, especially Rapier, I should mention specifically Rapier, because she can get in range and burst you down even though you thought you were safe. Don't forget to use your auto attacks. If you are just standing in place, you don't see yourself kiting back a lot, use your auto attacks. It adds damage to your whole setup, especially against your ranged opponents. Ranged opponents are actually a lot less predictable on where they're going to move when you're fighting them. So using your auto attacks makes up for that difference of shots that you're inevitably going to miss. Every other ability applies passive. Use this knowledge to determine which abilities will apply passive. Goes hand in hand with that comment on slowing down your abilities. If you've got a passive proc on an enemy and you had to choose between W and Q, you're going to pick Q, because that's going to do more damage and you're not going to waste a Q on a lower damage. I'm going to give you guys a skill order and combos. I personally only really play skill amp, so the auto attack focus. I'll explain it a little bit, but skill amp, start Q, W, E. It doesn't really matter the order. You shouldn't be getting into too many fights right off the bat. You can do E, W, Q, Q, E, W, whatever. You shouldn't really be using these abilities. I suggest after you've gotten all three abilities that you start maxing with prioritization on R, Q, passive, or W. I've actually been experimenting with W after Q for more damage. You can do passive if you think you're going to have to kite more. The last ability you should be maxing is E. Quick note, I do see some Zahirs put a single point into R and then never upgrade it again until the end of the game. So they'll be going Q, W, passive, E, and then finally maxing out R. R's really hard to hit in solos, and now in groups, definitely max out your R first. But in solos, it's actually really hard to hit R, and it might not even be worth putting those extra points into it. Maxing Q first allows you to one-shot level 1 chickens and bats early on in the game. It lowers the cooldown and it enables the rest of your kit better than maxing anything else. On the auto attack focus, again, start Q to E, W, E, no problem there. Then max in the order of Q, P, E, R, and W. You're using your W to lower cooldowns and slow enemies, but weaving autos in between. So auto attack, you're trying to either enad or crit. You're not really focused on kiting out or casting a lot of random abilities to do damage. Your damage is coming from your auto attacks. So E has more value here because it lowers the cooldown, and inevitably you're going to be able to land more auto attacks in because you're lowering the cooldown of it. W, having damage on W isn't going to help you too much. Some basic combos here. I put W, E, W, Q. You need a chakram to start this combo. The reason it works, especially if you're going around the map and proccing your Q, you'll always have a chakram ready. Getting that W, E gives you that empowered E, which knocks them up in the air for 1 second versus 0.5 seconds, which makes this next part of the combo, WQ, much easier, doing a large amount of damage. The second combo I have here, this is assuming you have no chakrams. You want to start with the you start with a Q, you hit 2 W's, which resets the Eye of Chakram, the Eye of Osriel. You hit the E, so it's an empowered E here. You WW, again, you're going to have an empowered Q, and you can reset the whole combo. You probably won't have E again, so you'll kite out, wait out your cooldowns a little bit, or you can auto attack if you think you can finish off the fight there. The last thing I have here, again, assuming you have a chakram to start with, you want to you want to start with W, you want to E, so empowered E, then R, which applies Eye of Azrael to your next Q, which is going to be empowered Q. So you can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. You can also put your ultimate in the extended burst trade, but the extended burst trade is kind of assuming you're kiting out, which means you're not going to be able to get a lot of work out of your ultimate. Alright, next page here. Some matchups. The game is changing a lot, so I was going to put together a list of characters that Zahir will go up against, but because we're adding a new character every other week, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I'm going for a more general approach here, and let's get through it. So his hardest matchups, his counters, are high-ranged characters. Zahir's abilities are all medium-range skill shots, and he's a squishy mage, making him an easy target for long-range bursty characters. Two examples here, Sisela and Sniper Aya, and this could be auto attack Sisela or spell out Sisela. They both outrange the crap out of Zahir. Sisela's Q can go so much farther, and Sniper Aya has really long range auto attacks. This makes it very difficult for Zahir to fight them. They can easily dodge in and out of abilities and punish you for any mistakes. Zahir actually likes to be in their face when he's up against a ranged matchup because he can easily hit Tornado and he can easily hit his abilities that way. Next up here I put sticky characters. These are almost counters. You can outplay them sometimes. These are characters like Magnus, Kiara, Hart, Fiora with Rapier specifically. They can be hit by Tornado and next thing you know they're right up on you again. This is by slowing you, by their high mobility. They just can't get away, or you can't get them off of you, so it's really difficult to fight these matchups. Skilled matchups, I think medium range characters, so examples, the same range as Zahir. That's Nadine, Hyejin, Adriana, another Zahir. This is basically who comes down to who hits more abilities and plays around cooldowns better. If you're up against a Nadine, don't get into the fight if your cooldowns are down. Once your cooldowns are back up, try to hit her. Same with Hyejin. Try to avoid her abilities. If you've got cooldowns, fight her. If she doesn't have cooldowns, fight her. But if her abilities are up, you need to get out of there. Adriana, same thing. And then last here, I have easy matchups. These are linear melee characters. This is Zahir's favorite enemies to fight. These are characters win by running you down and auto attacking you to death or using spells. Zahir has an easy time controlling their approach and creating space, which keeps them down. Examples: Jackie, Fiora without Rapier, or Hyunwoo. Lee Dailin, also actually not that bad of a matchup for Zahir because you know where she's going to go. She's pretty much going to go right for you in a straight line. As soon as they get close enough, hit them with the E. If you have an empowered E, even better. Combo them, go back to kiting. They can't catch up to you. It is amazing. It is super easy for Zahir to fight these matchups. You can get caught out. If they sneak out of a bush and get you, you might have a little bit more trouble, but that's the same with any of these other characters. Learning Zahir. Zahir is not easy. You can easily take 50 plus games before Zahir starts to catch on. I'm still learning Zahir. He's very hard to aim his skill shots. It's very easy to set up the combos. His build route can be difficult. And learning all those matchups, especially as we're adding more characters, can also get more and more difficult. I want to say start by practice moving backwards and side to side while using abilities on enemies. You can start with predictable targets like animals and AI. The most difficult part of Zahir's kit is moving the mouse back and forth between enemies and where you want to go while fighting. If someone's in front of you and they're trying to run you down, you have to put your mouse between you and them to use a Q and immediately put the Q or your mouse backwards to kite. And you're constantly doing this the whole time. Your cooldowns are so low that your mouse is going to be flicking between where you want to go and the enemy over and over again. It makes it very difficult. Determine a route for Zahir that will get you a good balance of stats early in the game to effectively snowball into victory. Stats that help Zahir a lot: spell amplification, health, defense, CDR. Looking for all of those stats will help you get those early kills and easily lead you to victory. Getting early kills helps Zahir a lot. Learn to craft traps and food drinks along a route that will provide you with experience points, so levels, mastery, and will also provide you with higher levels for your abilities. Anything you craft gives you experience points. The higher you level you are, the more damage your skills are going to do, the easier it is going to be to take down people, and the more stats you're going to have. Crafting beverages and food increases your health and your SP. Also allows you to fight early fights because you'll have extra resources. So in conclusion, keep putting in the time in Zahir and learning his abilities and route, and you will be a strong contender in this melee heavy meta. Do not be afraid to experiment with Zahir's build and remain flexible. Good players adapt to the current game state, such as adjusting defenses to match remaining enemies. Example there, the internet and Amazon's armor, very good against ability-based characters just because it reduces their damage. Lastly, the higher your ping, the more difficult it is to play Zahir. He's full on skill shots, always moving back, kiting. It's going to be very difficult to make sure that you're always on point with your positioning and your abilities if your ping is a little too high. I'd say under 100 is a good point to play Zahir. Lastly, just a little quote I have here. If it is God's calling, I'll gladly execute it. Special thanks to the following people. I've had extended conversations with these top 3 people, and I've also stocked a few top Zahirs on the rankings just to see what they were building, how they were doing their skill orders, and the Discord community. I've had a few questions for them, and they've been super helpful. If you're not already part of the Eternal Return Discord community, I highly recommend you join. They're a very helpful and nice group of people, and they help me. If you like the content, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and leaving a comment about what you thought was interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if you think that I need to make a video on any other kind of content, feel free to let me know as well. Thank you, and have a good day.